Welcome to the Walking Dead UK podcast. It's Entertainment Talks podcast for The Walking Dead World Beyond on AMC and Amazon. I'm your host Matthew. Joining me today, my co-host is David. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks.
Good. This is for season 1, episode 4, The Wrong End of a Telescope. What do you think of this episode?
I enjoyed it a bit more than last week. I thought this was quite good. It slowed down a little bit too much in the middle. I could do without some of the kind of bonding relationshipy stuff that they've wedged in, but then I know it's sort of a YA thing and you kind of have to do that. So but apart from that, I thought there was some nice little action sequences. I'm liking the having the whole group together. Rather than it just being the kids and then being chased by the others, So I like the dynamic between them, and there was some good kind of jokey bits. We got a little bit more information about some of the background as well. No, like big single character flashback this week, I don't think.
Yeah.
We got little pieces, but no huge big character flashback.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a nice change of pace. But overall it was good, I thought.
Cool. I love this episode again. I'm just really enjoying what they're doing so far. I thought that going into this school and having, looking around the different corridors and in the rooms and just the sort of tense horror kind of element into the episode was great. I really like what they did with the characters. I really like the pacing on and the storytelling on the reveal of Elton's claustrophobia, because it's not like a whole flashback thing, because all you really kind of need is, this Felix tries to open this locker, and immediately, you can almost tell immediately, even before they actually flash back slightly to Elton in that, I guess it's like a cardboard box or whatever it was before in the past, and you can immediately tell that, okay, it's claustrophobic, simple, got it. And then they kind of talk about it a bit later, and Felix tries to sort of help him along with that, and it's an instant sort of impact of the episode. I thought that was great. I thought that them kind of revisiting this place was good, and there's a little tie back into that purple-haired girl that we saw, who we saw later on as a dead walker, or empty, whatever. I thought that was great. Really like what they did with the sort of wolf in this episode, and it sort of drags one of the walkers away, and there's like a weird, because that's like, okay, that's not a normal thing you'd really see so much in like the Walking Dead franchise, I suppose, like zombies being in the typical sort of horror way of, they get mysteriously dragged down this hallway and you don't know what's happened to them. I really liked that, and I like the pairs that they have in this episode as well. You've got I think it's Hope and Silas, and then you've got Iris and Huck, and then you've got, of course, Felix and Elton. I really like the pairs that they put together there. I thought they worked particularly well, especially Hope with Iris with I'm still getting them two mixed up, especially with I think it's Iris and Silas in the little hall thing, and she's trying to sort of get him to do this little dance, and I thought that scene was in quite a good place as well, because it's one of those situations where, okay, they're waiting for Felix to come and save them in some sort of way. They can't really do much, so it's not like they're getting distracted on the mission and not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they can't really go anywhere anyway. But yeah, I really liked the goal that this episode had, and I thought it achieved that. And then of course there's the very weird, interesting post-credit scene, which we'll talk about later as well. So
yes,
which goes into more of the bigger picture of the Walking Dead world itself. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying what they're doing here, and like I kind of said last week, with like Fear being on at the same time as this, and pretty much I'm watching one on Sunday and then one on Monday, and then obviously doing the podcast later in the week or whatever. I'm really liking just the differences between the two of them, and it keeps the franchise sort of fresh when you haven't got three shows that are doing exactly the same thing. Because there's no way that you could say that Fear the Walking Dead and Walking Dead World Beyond are similar. Like they're trying to do completely different things. So yeah, I'm really enjoying what they're doing so far. I think it's great. So yeah, that's pretty much all the pre-talk I want to get into. We got a recap to get through as well, and we'll go into some housekeeping first. So we'll see you for all of that in just a minute.
Hey there, I'm Aaron Holman, host of Eye to Eye, a weekly podcast talk show all about
I
passion,
have this passion and this fire within me that burns brighter than the fire around me.
flow,
With performing, there's always a story to tell, whether it's my own or
and
not.
creativity.
I go, he's more than cute, he's creative.
All with an LGBT twist. Make sure to check out Eye to Eye, that's EYE, number 2, letter I, and rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in today.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
or weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes and that will take you over to Koalu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Koalu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon, there's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. Alright, recently on Entertainment Talk, Gaming Talk last night that we did, the Uncharted film or movie has got an update. Tom Holland had a photo of himself posted as the young version of Drake. Some people still don't know that that's actually a prequel and they don't think he's young enough, but he is actually playing a younger version of Nathan Drake in the upcoming Uncharted film. And Mark Wahlberg also, who is going to be playing Sully, of course, Drake's good friend and all that. He posted a sort of photo of himself with the moustache and everything, so we talked about all of that and our kind of expectations for the film and whatnot. Cyberpunk 2077 has surprisingly been delayed again, considering a few weeks ago it did go gold. CD Projekt Red put out a little bit of a statement explaining that and going into everything. So that was interesting. That actually broke as we were recording, so it was kind of a breaking news moment, if you will, which was kind of cool. And then Assassin's Creed is getting a live-action TV show adapted to Netflix. So Netflix is again going to be working with Ubisoft. Because they, of course, are at some point doing that Division film with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know when that's supposed to be out. And then, of course, they've got the animated Splinter Cell series coming out at some point in the future as well, so they got a bit of a partnership there, but Assassin's Creed is going to be the latest of those to get done. Fear the Walking Dead Season 6 Episode 3, did the podcast for that, so that's still continuing this week. Let's Play Sundays for Iron Man VR, a great game, by the way. If you've got a VR system, has to be a PlayStation VR system because it's exclusive. I'd highly recommend that you go and play that, and yeah, it's just a shame that more people aren't talking about that game. If you want to know my actual thoughts on the game, I did do a review on the website, so if you search for Iron Man or look at our video game reviews section, you should be able to find them in there. Manchester United drew 0-0 at home with Chelsea. You'd think that didn't give me a lot to talk about, but it certainly did in terms of performance and what that kind of means going forward. Big game and all that sort of thing. Manchester United play against Leipzig tonight at 8 o'clock, and I should be doing the podcast after the game, and we will see how that goes. That's the second of 6 Champions League group stage games, so we'll see about that. And then, of course, we play Arsenal on Sunday, another big game. We've got kind of a string of 5 sort of big games at the moment, so that's good. Finished Crash Bandicoot 4, did my review of that with the subheading or subtitle Love and Respect, because that's very much what I feel that Toys for Bob, the developer, has shown towards that game. Not only just making a very, very good video game and kind of pushing the series forward, but also just showing so much love and respect in terms of callbacks and Easter eggs and just general care and attention, that sort of thing. That does have a spoiler section in the second half. You wouldn't necessarily think so for a Crash Bandicoot game, but there's lots of things in there, surprises and spoilers, all that sort of stuff. But the first half of the podcast is spoiler free, so if you want my full thoughts on the game, go and listen to that part as well. Star Trek Discovery is back for Season 3 Episode 2. Episode 3 will of course be released on Friday for Netflix in the UK, so that's been good so far. And yeah, that's pretty much everything we've been doing on entertainmenttalk.org and on podcast platforms. Go and check it all out. Alright, let's get into the recap. As the group continues their journey, they discuss the mysterious Civil Republic, also known as the Hidden City, bringing up their high resource output that suggests they have a large population. We did see Elizabeth say, was it 200,000 or something?
Yes, I think it was 200,000, she said.
I think that's what they're referring to. So, their shadiness, CR's security measures, and how they have protection agreements between them. The campus colony and Portland as part of the alliance of the three, because there's the three groups, isn't there? So,
yeah.
Iris closes the discussion by saying that the CR took their dad and they don't know what his last message meant, because it was something about, like, it's not safe or whatever, and then everyone got killed. So, it's obviously not very safe. Hence the long walk to New York, which is their current actual goal. Felix and Huck quietly talk about their limited supplies and come up with a plan to try and change the kids' minds, which involves attempting to convince Elton to switch sides and help them persuade the others to turn around. Because that's what we sort of had at the end of last week's episode. You know, Felix wanted to do something else, but then he said, you know, I'm not going to be able to stop all of you, because they all stood up one by one and kind of agreed. So literally directly following on from that. I think this is them literally walking from last week's episode into this week's episode, isn't it?
Pretty much,
yeah. So interesting conversations. I mean, I kind of do like that, you know, Felix and Huck are still trying to sort of challenge the kids, and, you know, this isn't safe, as we see multiple times later in the episode. I mean, the whole world isn't safe, but that's beside the point. And then, yeah, trying to sort of change Elton's mind on things as well was quite interesting. So, yeah, feeding directly from last week's episode. What did you think of the opening?
Yeah, I thought this was good. I mean, I don't think Felix and Huck have got a chance in hell of convincing the girls that they should turn around. I mean, you know, even if they convince Elton that they should turn around, the girls are not going to stop. Because it's their dad, and, you know, they think he's in trouble, and they're going to go and stop him whatever happens. You know, going to go and help him whatever happens. So, yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting to get a little bit more, you know, just going over stuff that you may have kind of skipped past previously about the colony and all that sort of stuff. Of course, they still don't know that the colony no longer exists.
Yeah.
So
were they killed? They were killed after they left.
Yeah.
All these people.
Because they'd all left, and Felix and Huck had left. So, I mean, you know, Felix and Huck are sort of talking about, oh, you know, we should try and go back. And of course, if they do, I mean, it would be interesting if they did turn around and go back, because you'd then find that the colony had been wiped out. But then what do you do? And that would seem like, I mean, quite a major sort of step backwards, I think. You know, I mean, they seem to be on this journey to get to their father. It would, you know, I think they'll find out at some point. Maybe at the end of this season, might find out that the colony's been wiped out somehow. But
they should hopefully find that out at some point, because that's quite important. Do you think if all 6 of them went back, that Elizabeth would just kill all of them?
I don't know. It's difficult to say. Possibly not the girls, because, I mean, we don't know what's happened to the father, but assuming the father is still alive, and he's still, you know, okay, whether he'd actually kill the girls, because that would make him probably less compliant. You know, so, I mean, I think if they did go back, I mean, we don't know that Elizabeth is still there. I mean, the location we saw her at last week, it wasn't clear exactly where she was, but they
Yeah.
didn't seem to be at the colony.
I feel like that's
So-
a different place. Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't know that for definite, but it doesn't feel like the same place. So
So I mean, I think they would probably just go back and find the entire place, just overrun or deserted or whatever. So
yeah. Interesting that they're trying to convince Elton specifically, because even at the start he was kind of saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna, follow you. You're my friends and all that, and I kind of want to explore the world." So he doesn't have as specific as a reason as the girls do, because obviously they want to go and find their dad, but Elton's there for a different reason. So I kind of like Felix trying to approach Elton for that as well. That's kind of interesting. So
it makes sense.
yeah. As a storm approaches, the group seeks shelter inside an old high school. After a brief flashback highlighting a few students that used to attend the now dilapidated school,
Dilapidated, yes.
Iris convinces them to split up and search for food, because splitting up is always a great idea in something horror related.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of course, yeah. The search for food, items, and to gather water as well, supplies basically, and some clothes for Hope, who lost her bag in the blaze of Gory. They split off in pairs: Elton and Felix, Silas and Iris, and Hope and Huck. With Hope feeling like Iris is avoiding her after she revealed the truth about her mother's death. I mean, there's a bit of tension between maybe the two of them, but I don't know. I think they're fine, kind of, by the end of this episode. Just immediately as soon as they kind of got to the school and they said, okay, we're going to search this place for supplies, that immediately kind of took my interest, because even though I did know that, okay, this is going to be sort of the checkpoint for the episode and where they spend the majority of the time, I didn't mind that in terms of like pacing and everything, because everything that happens in the school here with all the horror stuff and the split up of the groups and what they do with the characters here, I actually really, really liked, because I could understand some viewers maybe looking at that and thinking like, oh, they're stopping off again somewhere and we're going to not progress again in this episode, and that sort of thing. But it's also, I also think it would have been a bit unrealistic if they looked at this school and went like, no, we won't search it for supplies, we'll just kind of walk on. Because I've just played Last of Us in the last couple of weeks, and you've got to search every building if you want to find stuff, certainly.
And they'd already said earlier on, there'd been a conversation between Felix and Huck about the fact that one of the reasons that they wanted to turn back was because they were going to run short of supplies. So it makes perfect sense that they try and kind of go in there, and there's a storm coming, and it seems to be a relatively clear sheltered building, so it makes perfect sense plot wise to stop off there. I agree with you as well. I mean, yes, I do want to see them get further on this journey, but it does make perfect sense for them to stop off at this point. So
what do you think of the different pairs that we've got? Elton and Felix, Silas and Iris, Hope and Huck.
Yeah, I mean, that all made sense, because they'd set up the sort of, the conversation between Felix and Huck, and sort of set up who they wanted to try and target to siphon each other off,
right?
And sort of get them talking, which, so that meant that Felix had to go with Elton, Hope had to go with Huck, and that lets Silas and Iris together. So Iris does seem to have the best relationship with Silas out of the group. So all made sense, I think.
Yeah, I think Hope and Huck were maybe the weakest of the pairs. They just didn't have particularly anything interesting to do. They were the more sort of maybe action pair of the three of them. I mean, you've got the character development and the dance stuff with Silas and Iris. And then with Elton and Felix, it's about, revealing Elton's claustrophobia and kind of developing those two characters. But no, I thought that they were quite good pairs. Hope flashes back to a fight she had with her dad about not showing up for a meeting with her and the principal. We finally get to meet Leo Bennett, who ultimately says that he felt if Hope sat there all day, she would rethink setting off stink bombs at school, because she's the kind of rebellious out to two sisters. Hope defends that they were time-release stink bombs and that it took 2 weeks to perfect, saying Leo must kick himself for picking a dud like her. Leo tells Hope that the adoption agency had told them she and Iris shared the same crib and that they were inseparable. The girls were bonded from the start. They had chosen each other. Leo and Kari just want to protect them. Leo calls Hope exceptional and wishes she could see herself the way he does. He then gives his daughter props for figuring out how to make the stink bombs in the first place. I think this is... I know I said I love this episode and I like a lot of things that they did. This probably stuck the least landing-wise. Like, it sort of had the least effect of the episode. I don't know, something about... I don't know, it just didn't really quite land for me. And as I was sort of watching these scenes, I was like, oh, I kind of want to get back to the... I know it's like important to do backstory and character development because we don't know... These are completely fresh new characters. They're not from the comics or related to any character that we've had before or anything. But I was kind of just, as I was watching this scene, I was kind of like, can we get back to the school? We just got there, and you know what's in there, and that sort of thing. I get why they have to do this as well, because you know you got the dad involved, and he's obviously going to New York to find him is the main goal for the show. But I don't know, it just didn't quite stick for me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting way to meet the dad, and they needed us to have seen him somewhere else for the setup towards the end as well. For that post-credits scene, you needed to know at least what he looked like, and I think this is the first time anywhere we've actually seen him. So I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think it was a great scene, but it was sort of necessary in that you needed to see a little bit of the relationship between them, and you also need to introduce him so we had some idea who he was. Yeah. It just sort of set up the type of relationship that they had and what he thought. But at the end of the day, he's a dad and they're his kids, and he clearly loved them. We knew that from the fact that he was updating them with messages and stuff. So I mean, whilst there was some purpose to it, there may have been another way of doing that scene possibly. Although, I mean, it did give a bit more for Hope to do, even though it was in a flashback as well. As you say, she was a bit underserved this episode. I totally get the reason for it being there and everything. I just think the idea that they came out with here just didn't quite work. But it is what it is. So elsewhere, Felix and Elton search for items they can use to collect water. Felix gets to know Elton a bit more, bringing up his photography because we've seen him taking photos, and of course he takes one at the end of the episode. And love of science. Felix mentions the research that's being done back home, but Elton says being able to physically document the outside world is more of a visceral learning experience than he is, and he is also invested in helping Iris and Hope find their dad. After Elton finds some iodine, I think that's what it's called, the holy grail of water purification, he's very, very happy to have found this particular thing. And of course it's very useful, so it makes sense. The two step back into the hall and notice fresh blood and drag marks, unsure if it was an empty or something else. And kind of puts the first little hint of like, okay, there's not just walkers here, there's something else here, and we didn't quite know. And then we get the scene later of the walker being dragged. I'm going to keep calling them walkers, by the way, because I'm just too used to doing that. You know what I mean? But it was the first little sort of, okay, we get a good little bit of character development with them, a good little conversation, and Elton's happy to find this water purification, very useful for the group. Obviously, it's probably one of the most useful things they could actually find as well. And then, just talking about what Elton sort of wants to do, the photos and the science and stuff, and then you kind of finish with that a little bit, and then you set up with this blood mark on the floor, which doesn't look very normal. So really liked what they did here and how they used this to set up later parts of the episode as well. What did you think? Nice little scene. Did they actually use the iodine anywhere else? I don't think they used it in the episode, but in the episode, so I'm sure that will come back up at some point later on. I hope so. And I do wonder whether maybe that'll connect back to the fact that we have that previous scene that we've had about Hope mixing chemicals together to make that smoke bomb. I do wonder whether the iodine will come back up at a later episode, because that's sort of established that she kind of knows something about chemistry. Right. and
Yeah.
they've now got this particular chemical ingredient. It may be that between her and Elton, because Elton obviously knows a little bit about chemistry as well. I wonder if maybe they'll be using the iodine for something other than water purification at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's that's sort of interesting. Those scenes kind of come next to each other, and they both have a sort of chemistry thing in there, so that's a possibility. And yeah, I mean, we knew Elton's motivations weren't purely to help the sisters find their dad. We knew that it was more about him wanting to go out and explore the world. I do like Elton as a character. I think he's quite interesting because
I like him. Yeah.
He's one of those that after all this is over, and they've done both seasons. Elton's one of those characters that I could see maybe popping up somewhere else in one of the other shows.
Yeah, I'd love to see him have a conversation with Eugene. That would be great.
Yeah.
So he's almost like a younger, clearer speaker version of Eugene.
Yes.
Because Eugene tries to just make almost every sentence he says sound more complicated than what he needs to, almost in like a Shakespearean type of way, which we've talked about on the main show before.
Yeah.
But Elton just kind of keeps things a bit simple. So yeah, it'd be good if they kind of had a conversation. That would be cool. Felix attempts to radio Silas and Iris over the walkie, but no one responds. Silas and Iris are busy checking out the gymnasium, still filled with prom decorations and remnants of the students who used to attend, including those who died there. When they go to leave, they realise water damage has caused some of the doors to jam, which is unfortunate, and the other entrance is being blocked off by an empty outside of the door. Iris tries to radio Felix, but unfortunately the batteries in the walkie are corroded. So yeah, this is when we first realise that they're trapped, and yeah, we kind of that's a good sort of way to set up this set piece for later. What do you think of the kind of build up to all that?
Yeah, I mean, they get trapped by a walker, and it does go back to this thing of I mean, we don't expect them to just try and kill them straight out. We're used to people trying to kill zombies in this show. But they are, as we've established, very inexperienced at that. Mm-hmm. But it is just one of them at that point. And you do kind of think, really, you wouldn't even try to get past it. Mm-hmm. You just sort of, and you've got no radio. I mean, that was a massive oversight on them with the walkies as well, of like the fact that the batteries are corroded. Like, did you not check these before you handed them out to each other?
I wonder when that happened to the walkie-talkie.
Yeah. That seems
because
like
because there's two scenarios. Either they got these walkies and they were fine, and then later they didn't realise they got corroded and now they're in this situation, or they just picked them up, didn't check, and they are where they are now. So I don't know.
Yeah, that just it smelt a bit of a plot MacGuffin. That
yeah.
Sort of a convenient thing to be able to trap them in this room.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the weakest thing. One of the weakest things in the episode for me was the batteries are corroded. Well, yeah, but why are the batteries corroded? That doesn't make any sense really, because surely they would have checked them at some point. I mean, I know they're kids, and but even so, you're trying to tell me that at no point prior to this have they ever used the walkie-talkies. I mean, I'm not sure whether the kids had the walkies or whether it was Felix and Huck that brought them. And if Felix and Huck brought them, then they definitely should be working. So it just that just felt like a bit of a plot MacGuffin to me. But
no, I kind of agree in a way. A bit of an oversight with that. And I mean, it's interesting with the walker, because later on when they're sort of forced to face it head on and they end up just going around it and avoided it, they could have potentially done that a bit earlier, like if it was with the other one, because I'm sure is it the same empty or the same walker that they avoid later? It sort of breaks through or something, doesn't it? And then they try and no, it's one from outside, isn't it?
Yeah, there's one I mean, there are more later on that they meet when they get out, but the other thing is I don't quite understand how they got trapped in there, because if the walker came, they obviously got into that room, and the door can't have got warped after that. And yes, the walker might have blocked off the way that they came in, but surely they can just get out the same way. Once they're past the walker that's at that door, why didn't they just go back the way that they came in?
I don't know. So
the whole them getting trapped in that room, really dubious writing from as far as I could see.
Yeah. I can see some problems with the scene, but I suppose it does its character development job at the end.
Yes.
So, as they continue searching for supplies, Hope asks Huck about her dad, saying he must have been proud of her for being in the army. Hope says she was, but it's always complicated with shit dads. Always complicated shit with dads, or pretty much the same thing. And how they have a, quote, funny way of showing they give a shit sometimes. Hope remembers the argument she had with her dad after Leo decided to leave and go with the CRM to help them with their scientific pursuits, believing this isn't the end of the world, though Hope disagrees. She cries, telling her dad that she'll be better, and Leo assures her that he's not going on this trip because of her, and she's not a screw-up, despite whatever she believes, so he's trying to make her sort of feel better. Leo mentions he has a lot he wants to speak with Hope about, and they talk, and that they'll talk more when he gets back, which he's not going to come back. He tells Hope about the communications device he made in order to secretly send messages to Hope and Iris, while he's away, and that he loves her more, and she'll more than she'll ever know. So yeah, kind of setting up, this device that we see in the pilot episode with the sending messages things, which turned out to be very, very important, because it's one of the whole reasons that they even went to New York in the first place, because they realized that something was up. So yeah, this was more of an effective, or more of a kind of useful flashback than maybe the previous one, because there's actually setting up certain things in the future that we already know about, and obviously we know that he's not going to be making his way back because the girls are actually on their way to him. And then her kind of feeling down about herself and stuff, and her dad sort of saying that he loves her more than she'll ever know, and she doesn't feel great about herself, but he's trying to sort of make her feel better about the situation as he's sort of in a panic to leave and trying to do this sort of last thing. I thought this was a better flashback than the earlier one. It has a bit more use to it, I suppose, with certain later things.
Yeah, well, I don't know, because I think to me this is sort of treading over old ground. There's nothing really new in there that we didn't already know. I mean, we know he loves the kids. We know he'd gone, and he hadn't gone because of the kids. Blatantly,
right, he went because of the CRM thing.
Yeah, he went because of the CRM. So we sort of knew most of this stuff already. So I'm not sure how useful this actually is particularly. I mean, and we also knew he created the communications device. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. My feeling is the other seat's probably actually more useful than this one. But again, this was the sort of point where I was kind of waning a little bit in some of this stuff, because I'm not sure entirely how useful this scene was, but yeah.
What I kind of meant was it's more useful than the previous one, maybe. Sort of. I
don't know. I think in the previous one, like I say, it sort of establishes a bit more of a Hope has some abilities with chemistry. It does establish. I mean, and neither of them are particularly great, the flashback scenes, other than it introduces and shows what the father looks like, which they needed to do for the end of the episode. That neither of them are hugely useful. The only thing with the other one is, and it remains to be seen whether that pays off, is the fact that it establishes that she obviously has some skill with chemistry, and we then get them finding a chemical thing in the next scene. So whether that actually pays off or not, I don't know. But I don't think there's anything in this particular scene, in the second scene, that actually tells us anything that we didn't already know. So
yeah. Moving on from that, when Felix and Elton come across an empty inside of a locker, stuffed inside of a locker, Elton has a brief flashback to when he was terrified, a terrified little kid sitting in a small space beneath the floorboards, covering his ears. When Felix picks up on Elton's discomfort, which we kind of did almost at the same time as him, like as the viewer, so that was a interesting moment. Picks up on Elton's discomfort, and the way he flinches at the banging from inside the locker because the thing's trying to get out. Elton explains that he's claustrophobic. After making their way into another hall, Felix jumps on the opportunity to tell Elton he understands he has his reason for being out here, but none of them are ready for this, which I think he's pretty much correct about that, but at the time they didn't really have a choice. Felix says that if Elton cares about his friends, he'll help Felix and Huck convince the others to turn back. He then shows Elton his tattoo, sharing he got it to remind him of everything and everyone he's lost. Crying, Felix says he's lost his parents, which we saw obviously in the second episode.
Yes.
I think it was the second episode, yeah, the whole flashback thing with that. Just like Elton did. Among others, he can't lose anyone else. I thought this was a great scene, and I thought that the pacing on because you don't really need too much more in terms of explaining his claustrophobia. You see that, okay, this thing is stuffed in this walker's stuffed in this locker. He has a flashback to when he was trapped somewhere. He has the discomfort. Elton realizes it almost at the same time that we do as the viewers, and they kind of move on from it and then discuss it in this other room. I thought this was a great little scene to just kind of very quickly explain that. Like, you don't really need, for something like claustrophobia, I don't really think you need a full sort of 5-minute like flashback. A bit sort of like if you were to look at Felix and his backstory with his dad and the whole thing going on there, you need a little bit more time to explain something like that, and they did take the time to explain those sorts of things. But with this, it can be, at least I feel like it can be something a lot quicker, and they kind of, I guess, bond a little bit in some ways over it, and they kind of share some moments together. So I thought this was done really well. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting little scene, and it does set a few things up as well. I mean, firstly, Elton's claustrophobia, which is something that we can potentially use later on. Mm-hmm. You also got the fact that he was in this, little kid terrified in this little space under some floorboards. We don't know exactly what that was, but that's again something that you could explore later on, much like the episode, the thing we saw with Silas when they did the little vignettes of him.
Thing.
The violent thing, whatever it was, which we do find a little bit more about that this episode as well. So it's a sort of little drip feeding of some of his background story as well. It also explains why he wants to be out in the world, rather than cooped up in one place, why he wants to be out there and explore a bit more. I think that the fact that he's claustrophobic helps speak to that motivation as well a little bit of, he likes being outdoors, he likes being in open spaces. So I think, that all kind of makes sense. And it also gives you a little bit more about Felix's motivation, which, he doesn't want to lose anybody else. I mean, he's on the wrong show, really, to not want to lose anybody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, I absolutely, you understand that was probably Felix's motivation, is trying to protect everybody anyway. So it's a good little scene. It gives little bits of information. It gives a bit of character bonding, and I like this. I think it works.
That was great. Still trapped in the school gym, Iris and Silas bond over things they never had the chance to experience, and how Iris wishes she hadn't put so much pressure on herself growing up to make up for everything. I'm sure many of us have felt that about different things in the past. She says she definitely would have gone to more dances and had more fun. Silas brings up her art and then says she's different now, leading them onto their journey. Iris calls him different too, mentioning how he helped save them back at the Blaze. Silas knows what people at the colony thought of him, because obviously they didn't like him very much and everything, what they said about him, and he's relieved knowing he doesn't have to experience that daily that daily in the outside world, to where he is now. The two then listen to some of Silas's music before Iris convinces him to have a dance with her, and then they you see sort of, I like, there's something we didn't quite mention a bit earlier, when we're getting some flashbacks about the school, and they have this interesting little bit of art they do around the characters that used to be there.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get it a little bit again in this scene where they start dancing, and then they sort of almost fill in the characters that would have been there. I thought that was an interesting little bit of an art direction, and the way they kind of use that as well. So yeah, again, they maybe could have gotten out of here earlier, but it leads to this scene, which I think is important for the two of them. Again, doing some character development and talking about, what they could have had in the past, and trying to get sort of past that, and just sort of trying to, move on a little bit themselves as characters. They both got things that they regret. I'm sure we all do, as well. But yeah, I thought it was a good scene between the two of them. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, parking the fact that I shouldn't really be trapped in there in the first place. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice little bonding scene, I guess, and you do get a little bit more about Silas's motivations for going just to not be in the colony. Pretty much, he's Silas's motivations, and he sort of wants to help these people that he's seen as his friends now. But his motivation for leaving was the fact that he was fairly persecuted from where he was for something he maybe did or didn't do. And I mean, I think it's becoming more clear that he probably did do whatever it was.
Yeah.
But and I don't know. I don't know whether it's Iris's character that just slightly bugs me a little bit. I don't know what it is about her. But,
Okay.
yeah, I just, and the dancing scene, well, yeah, okay, fine, it's cute, but this is where this is the sort of bit that stuck out to me as being very YA,
Yeah, it did feel a little bit CW-ish.
Yes,
if that's the right term to use. Because most of their shows are focused on young characters, apart from a few. But no, I kind of get the frustration a little bit with that, but I still thought it was a good scene and did the job that it was put in there to do. So, meanwhile, Huck and Hope, or Hope and Huck, whatever way around, find themselves being snarled at by a very protective wolf posted in a doorway, attempting to keep the humans away from something that's in there. Huck slowly guides Hope past the wolf, and the two continue down the hallway as Felix and Elton finally find Iris and Silas in the gym. Iris tells them through the door that the main entrance is jammed, and the way back leading to the basement is being blocked by a walker. Felix says he and Elton will go through the basement to kill the empty, but warns Iris and Silas to stay there and wait for them, since there's something else roaming in the hallways, which of course, so it's two of the groups that know about this wolf in the hallway. It's Silas and Iris that don't, isn't it? They don't know that this wolf is out there.
And Felix and Elton know there is something out there. They just don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, they're aware
but
of the threat.
clearly it had to be some sort of animal, unless they were going to introduce some major shift in the zombies in the Walking Dead universe, which I think was very unlikely.
Yeah.
It had to be a wolf.
Do some Last of Us stuff or something.
Yeah, exactly. So we get to see that it is a wolf, and it's it's protecting and feeding its pups in the and that appears to be what it is. And they've taken, and this seems to be the wolf's territory. This school, and it's been munching on walkers to keep itself alive. So I mean, we get to see what it is. It's an interesting little twist because it's not something we've really seen in The Walking Dead before, and it does make a certain amount of sense that in an environment like this, where the walkers are kind of probably generally aren't in big packs, they're sort of they're protected inside the school, they're one or two on their own. There might be quite a lot of them in there, but there's only one or two on their own. So whereas out in the wild, wolves probably would struggle, because if you run into a horde, they're probably going to really if they get stuck in the middle of a horde, that's it, they're gone. It's the same as it would be if you're a human. In an environment like this, a wolf could probably hunt one of them quite easily and pull it down and avoid getting bitten, potentially. So, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's very difficult to know. But yeah, I mean, it sort of makes sense maybe in this sort of environment that a wolf maybe could survive, or a pair of wolves could survive.
Yeah. I found it interesting as well because if that wolf decides to jump out of them, they would have to have shot it, and one of them would have to have gone through the act of actually doing that, or at least like try to stab it or something like that. And some audience people watching the show don't sometimes like doing things like killing wolves or dogs or whatever.
Yeah.
And
you can abuse
humans. Sorry, go on.
You can abuse humans as much as you like on the show, but if you ever attack an animal, then that's a big no-no. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like in Last of Us 2, there is a lot of dogs that will attack you, and essentially the more and more humans that you kill in the game, the wolf will eventually like pick up, the dog in the game will eventually pick up like your scent, and it will start like scratching on the door to let the other people know like you're in that room or whatever, and you will eventually have to kill it. Presuming that it actually does like find you and catch up to you and stuff. And a lot of people had trouble doing that in the game, obviously for various reasons. I just found it interesting here. They decided to not go through with that and decided to make the characters just kind of slowly walk past, which was still a moment of tension, and it was still quite good because you just never knew. I mean, could one of these characters have died? We don't know. So I found that quite an interesting sort of point of horror tension, if you will. So I thought that was good. Hope calls Huck out on trying to get her to change her mind and go back home. The younger girl says a few days ago she might have agreed to go back, but now she thinks her dad was trying to protect her from something she wants, and wants to ask him about it once they find him. The pair find a supply closet full of canned food and begin stocking up. Back at the gym, Silas and Iris realize they can't wait around after a growling wolf slips into the vent and attempts to get inside the room. The kids carefully maneuver their way around an empty, trapping it in the gym as they head into the basement. Interesting choices from them, one of which because, Felix said no matter what you need to stay there, and they didn't end up doing that. The other interesting thing is they do have to come across one of these walkers in the end because it gets in the room and they have to kind of maneuver their way around it, which they do quite successfully. So two kind of interesting points from them there. I thought this was and they finally get out of this room as well, which is good. What do you think about their choices here?
Yeah, well, makes sense. I think they've got potentially a wolf about to break through on them. What I think is kind of interesting, and I suspect didn't happen for budgetary reasons, was I was expecting once the walker got shoved into that room, the wolf to burst out and take it down. Because that would seem like it would sort of make sense in that you sort of end up leaving the walker in there as kind of bait for the wolf to go after. But obviously that would have involved a lot of CG messing around to create that scene. So maybe it was in the script and they cut it out. But I sort of feel that would have been the next natural progressive step for that and might have kind of added a little bit to that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of them actually kind of leaving, I think that sort of makes sense. But again, I come back to this thing of, if that's the entrance that they came in from, yes, I get there was a walker across the front of it, but then all the stuff that happens afterwards, where did all the other walkers then come from? Because they obviously didn't have a problem getting past them before. So that's where it all sort of doesn't quite hold together for me, but
Sure. Yeah. Do you think the wolf attack happened off screen? The one that you kind of saying?
Yeah, I suspect it probably did, although we didn't hear it. I mean, you could have done it with the sound effect and not kind of cut back to it, but
Yeah. I assume that happened off screen. So, as MTs begin to converge on Silas and Iris, Hope and Huck hear the two on the other side of a chained-up door, and Iris yells for help. Silas, recalling more flashbacks of the violent incident from his past and things people have whispered about him, including how he should be in jail for obviously the attack or whatever, completely snaps and takes one of the MTs to the ground, punching it over and over. Felix and Elton find Hope and Huck, and the four are able to get the door open. Elton runs up to Silas to try to get him to stop hitting the MT, and Silas shoves him to the ground, causing Elton to land on his shoulder. Felix takes out the MTs and yells at Silas, who finally stops hitting the MT before staring at his hands because he's got blood on his hands, and apologizing. Afterwards, Hope asks Iris if they're okay. Iris says there's a lot she missed out on, and that they should have talked about what happened the night their mother died sooner, that they both missed out on being there for each other, but for now the sisters are okay, which was what I was talking about earlier. They're kind of okay by the end of the episode. I think this work here, what they did with Silas, was great, because a lot of people are saying that, he shouldn't have been punching this walker because he could have cut his hand on the walker's teeth. It's a character flaw for Silas. Like, he's not in and we've had it already set up that he's not in control of these violent tendencies that he's got. So it makes perfect sense to me that with him having flashbacks towards his violent past and this obstacle or enemy that's in his way, which is this walker, he tackles it to the ground and punches it, seemingly in the same way that he did with the person in the past when we saw the flashbacks. Drops his wrench thing onto the floor and starts punching it, and just gets completely in this zone of only being focused on that. And then of course when Elton comes over and shoves him, what's probably happened there is Silas has seen Elton come over, sees it as just like something trying to stop him and get him out of this zone that he's in. So obviously he shoves Elton back. He would have tried to shove any of them back, and then just can't stop himself because he's sort of in the zone of what he's doing, and it just it feeds directly into his personality. Yes, it's something that he shouldn't have done necessarily, because obviously he could have cut his hand on the walker's mouth, but it's part of a character flaw for him, and I thought this was told really well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because he does mention that it was his dad that he mentions later on that it's actually when he's talking to Iris, do you think that I killed my dad? So we know that it was the father that was which is what I said last week, was I rather suspected it was that. And it sort of feeds into the thing that I was saying last week as well, about I rather suspect that it was an abusive father that was either abusing him or the mother. And I think that
That's
snapped.
where that comes from.
Yeah, I think that he snapped and beat the father to death. And I think in this situation, he's been bonding with Iris, and Iris is in danger, and he snaps
and
again.
It clicks,
because it clicks, he snaps and goes and just literally metaphorically sees red and just goes for it. So and he has no control over it. He goes into a blind rage, and it was a stupid thing to do, because as you say, he could have cut his hands, and they could have been incredibly dangerous. But I mean, it made perfect sense for that character in that moment, and sort of feeds back into what we'd seen previously. He clearly, I rather suspect he comes from an abused home, and he was either he's been surrounded by this violence, because I suspect that was what his father was like. And so the whole thing, I think the setup for it makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, they did it well in terms of like structure and everything, because you've already set up that this is what this is part of Silas's character. Because if you didn't do those flashbacks, I think last week, if you don't do them and then you just have this scene happen, it would seem like he's just sort of snapped for not much of a reason. So I think they did a great job here. So yeah, and not too much to say about for the sisters, but they make up and kind of move on, which I think is nice. So Huck and Felix give Elton props for being a tough kid before Elton asks Felix how if they were going to turn back. They would avoid the blaze of glory. Felix says there are other ways around. I'm sure there is as well. Depending on how long it takes to convince everyone to go back. Noting that their best chance is the Mississippi, Felix attempts to drive the point home by saying he and Huck should use Elton's help to keep everyone alive. So again, Felix attempting to get Elton to go back, and it makes sense that he would ask him because he's just kind of there to help his friend, and he's not specifically there to find the dad and everything. Again, it's kind of returning to a point earlier in the episode of why he would ask Elton particularly. Plus, they've been bonding in the episode and everything through all the claustrophobia stuff, and Felix clearly trusts Elton with what he's trying to do. So, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, do we know exactly where they sort of were in this?
Where the school is?
Previously, where they actually this whole thing is based. I mean, we know it's all based in a particular area of the US. I mean, we know they're based sort of Georgia, Atlanta, that sort of
that rough area.
So, I mean, the fact that they talk about going via the Mississippi is sort of interesting, I think. But lots of recap now. Where is it? There it is. So, yeah, I mean and the fact that there is a way around. Felix says they know a way around. I still don't think they're going to end up heading back.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where this actually goes, because Felix is very intent on doing this. Don't know if that will cause some sort of bigger conflict within the group or something. This isn't something that the character's letting go of, because he talked about it last week, talked about it twice this week to the same character. But obviously, like we've established already, the main 4 kids don't want to go back. So that's got to come to some sort of head eventually. And I'm curious to see where that goes. So, because I don't see how that all goes in the same direction necessarily. Because one character or 2 characters really want one thing. They're sort of submitting to the other 4 characters at the moment. Those other 4 characters want something else, but one of the 4 of them is trying to get convinced by the other 2. So, I don't know. But we shall see. Again, I don't know how or if it could work if Felix, Huck, and maybe somebody else go back, how that might work necessarily. But
I don't see them splitting up the group in that way.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work necessarily. So we shall see. Iris finds Silas sitting by himself, who tells her they should have left him behind, feeling guilty about hurting Elton because he pushed him over accidentally. Iris says they're not leaving him, and Elton knows what happened was an accident. I'm sure he does. Silas asks if Iris thinks he killed his dad, and like the others do back home. Iris says it still doesn't matter. He saved them twice now, and that's what matters. After Silas gets cleaned up, Felix asks him if he's good, and Silas nods as Elton comes up and tells Silas, reassuring, you are. So they're just trying to all reassure him that everything's fine. Before leaving the auditorium and the school, Elton grabs his camera and convinces the others to let him take a group photo. Surprisingly nice end to the episode, considering all of the drama. So, I thought it was a good end to the episode. They're going to leave the school, and we'll see where they end up next week, I suppose. And again, what happens with this whole one set of characters wanted to do one thing, the others wanted to do something else. So we'll see how that works out. What do you think of this nice little end to the episode? The end to the episode, we have a post-credit scene. So
I mean, it's fine. Ties up that sort of ties everything up a little bit. Silas, as I said earlier, has this conversation with Iris, and Silas clearly is messed up, but he's, I think, overall a good kid, and he's been through a lot, and I think if there is a character out of this group that's going to die, it's probably going to be Silas doing something heroic to save everybody else. I rather suspect,
That makes sense. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see actually whether this entire group does make it through all 2 seasons or not.
Yeah, I'm very curious about which of the 6 of these dies first. If they do, or I don't know.
Or if they make it.
It's kind of hard to tell with this show what they're gonna do, stakes-wise and character death-wise with these 6.
Yeah,
because I can't see Elizabeth dying. Like, she's just too important to.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly Elizabeth is somebody that I suspect we will see pop up in other things. I think she'll end up being connective tissue between a few different shows.
Yeah,
I mean, it would make sense if she appears in the Rick movies, and
definitely
if she maybe pops up at the end of the main show, or maybe even Fear, because that's also dealing with this same group. So, I mean, there is. I think she's probably okay.
Yeah.
Out of the main characters, as I say, I think Silas is likely to the one that goes out in some way saving the rest of them. I would have thought. I think the sisters are probably okay.
Yeah.
But
Elton seems fairly important.
Yeah,
well.
And I hope I think Elton's probably, because I mean Elton clearly is the weakest out of the group in terms of he's more brains rather than brawn. So
sure.
Although I think he's probably going to be okay, because he's sort of the one that you would think would get killed first. So
yeah. So yeah, we shall see what happens. After the credits, as we see a woman with a CRM tattoo on her hand, noting the results of a study with a test subject. There's a photo on her desk with Dr. Bennett on it. She's talking about his reaction after receiving plasma and how long the transformation took. She says his name was Dr. Samuel Abbott of Portland, and she calls for the next test subject as she pauses to eat a sandwich. As the camera pulls away, we can see that there are dozens of test subjects, like quite a few. There's probably some further back to that as well. It looked like there was some like at the back maybe. Walker's empty, is tied to boards and housed in a special containment field. The next test subject is subject A403. As the scene fades away, we see that the photo on her desk is of Dr. Bennett and Dr. Abbott, suggesting that they are being used as test subjects themselves. Just one tiny problem with the scene: you didn't need to have her eat a sandwich and try and talk with her mouth full.
You
didn't need that.
There's something that always sticks in my mind whenever I see that. Because I've done set visits before, and I was on a set visit for Humans, and I remember watching, I can't remember the girl's name, but the girl that played the older daughter on Humans, and there was a scene that I watched them film, which was her coming in for breakfast, taking a bite out of a round of toast, saying, "I'm late, I've got to go," or something of that nature. 15 rounds of toast later.
Christ.
So, and it's like, but of course, every time they do that scene, it has to be a brand new round of toast. And so there is a good chance that they had 15, and that sandwich was enormous as well. There is a good chance that they had about 15 sandwiches like that, and shot that so many different times. So it's ever since that I saw them film that, it's one of the things that, like, anytime I see somebody eating on screen, I'm thinking, God, that poor person must have like done that at least 5 or 6 times at this point.
Yeah.
So
my main issue with it in this scene, if you're gonna have a big reveal like this, which is connected to the whole franchise about these test subjects and the whole AB thing that we've been seeing for several seasons, there's no reason for that sandwich to be in there.
Well, there sort of is. I get the purpose to it, in that it's it's a weird situation, and it feels like a big reveal to us, but to the character, what they're sort of trying to portray by the fact that she's just casually picking up, eating a sandwich and going, bring out the next one, with a mouthful. It's sort of trying to portray that this is just an everyday thing for her. This is what she's doing. It's there's a kind of casualness to it. The fact that she's surrounded by these death and all these walkers, but it's an office job essentially to her.
Sure.
And so there is a purpose to it being there. I do kind of get why they put it in. But yeah, it's an interesting scene, and the photo that was on the desk, and the fact that the guy with the big beard that was the walker that she was calling Doctor whatever it was, if you actually look at the photo, I'm fairly positive the person on the other side of the girl's dad, because she's got her arms around the girl's dad, so clearly they were in some sort of relationship.
Yeah.
The guy on the other side seems to be the person that's the walker that she's testing on, which doesn't necessarily bode hugely well for what's happened to their father. Whether maybe he's the next test subject, maybe not, you don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't suspect that when they're going to find him, it's going to be a good scene
No.
or situation, you know.
Probably not.
So, because that wouldn't be very Walking Dead-esque. I know that
No.
happens. I know that happens now and again on certain,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
certain good,
Fear
certain
this
good
week
reunions
particularly. Yes.
and everything, but it doesn't happen all the time. So,
Yeah.
and this isn't supposed to
It
be a
is
happy
rare.
world.
Yes.
I think that the sandwich thing aside, I thought it was a good scene. I thought it was a good way to kind of reveal some of this. There's still a big amount of mystery to it, to exactly, okay, who's here and like kind of what's going on. Immediately I saw a bunch of articles kind of the next day about like, oh, is Rick there? Is he being tested on? I really doubt that Rick's in that particular place, because they all seem to be people that have maybe turned or are turning.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be in. He's not going to be in there being tested on in that way. That clearly is some sort of research and development thing. I mean, yes, we know that Rick is with that group somewhere,
He's
but
here somewhere. Yeah,
there's, as we've established, there's about 200,000 people in that.
He's one of the
group,
200,000, isn't he?
Yeah,
Pretty sure.
So he's there somewhere, but I wouldn't necessarily directly connect it to that. This sort of experimentation thing we've not really seen before. We've seen a little bit with the guys in Fear, not directly connected to this group, but the guys that had the sort of ranch encampment thing were doing kind of tests to see how long it took people to turn, and they were trying different kind of races and stuff. That was sort of in season 3, I think, but not to this sort of scientific level. It was more a group of sociopaths kind of messing around with the dead. So we've not sort of seen it done to this kind of level before, but so I think that's interesting, and it opens a interesting new area. That I sort of want to see a bit more of that, as well. I would like to see a bit more of them.
Oh, definitely.
Showing that side of things,
Yeah. So, interesting little reveal. Still some questions to be asked. I'm sure we're going to see some more of it in the Rick film in 2035 when that gets done. So it's funny because the admin, the Walking Dead admin on Twitter said like it's going to be a minute before we see those films, which I suspect is very much the case. So do you think that first film, I'm guessing, will probably come out after this show is finished? I feel like it will.
I mean, it would not surprise me if this and the main show are going to end up ending around about the same time, aren't they? I think.
Yeah.
So I would think the thing that comes out immediately after this, I think one of the next big things straight after that will end up being the Rick things, because that's going to be 2022, I think, isn't it?
Somewhere around there, maybe.
Yeah, because we got this year, maybe got so we've got the second half of this next year, then we've got the end of the main show, which is the main show ends in 2022. So maybe actually, if this is this year and next year, maybe you won't end at the same time. So you're gonna have 2 seasons of this, and then you're gonna have the last few episodes coming in 2022 of the main show, and I would have expected that the Rick thing will be the thing that comes after that.
Yep. So we shall see. But just don't have your actors eating as they're delivering lines. It's very annoying. Let's move on to feedback and questions and everything else. If you want to send in feedback, thoughts, questions, feelings, concerns, whatever, about Walking Dead War Beyond, or anything else related to Entertainment Talk, any of the other podcasts or shows that we do, or just the website in general. Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter eTalkUK, there's a contact page and information in your show notes. 3 to get through here. Hannah says, so with these kids being new to the world, how long do you expect it to be until they are comfortably killing empties? I was kind of thinking about this when we were roughly 2 episodes in, or as we sort of started to notice that, okay, that this is how these kids are going to kind of be for a little while. I think that either the end of the first season or the start of the second, roughly, they will get like completely comfortable. I think they'll get to a point where they're killing more of them, but just not all of them, and it will maybe slowly kind of transition. The only one who hasn't killed one yet, I think, is Elton, because Silas has killed, well, he beat one to death in this episode. So that one must be dead. Iris and Hope have both killed one. Elton hasn't, and obviously Harkins and Felix have, and obviously Elizabeth has killed a whole camp's worth. But yeah, that's roughly the timeline I think you're going to be looking for. And I think what's going to kind of happen is these characters are going to have to be in a life or death situation in order to kill these, which is going to be good for tension, I think, because like we saw with Iris and Hope last week, the week before, when they were around the tires and everything, and they were pretty much like, one of them was struggling to push two of them off, and then Iris and Hope, they came in and sort of helped each other out. That's the type of life and death situation I'm talking about. In this episode where you got Iris and Silas in the gym, and they can just walk around the walker or the empty, I think you're going to continue to see that a little bit more just until they get more comfortable. Obviously the exception with Silas in this episode is his whole violent tendencies flashback PTSD thing kicked in, and he beat that walker to death. But I think that's kind of what they're going to be going for. What do you think?
Yeah, it would make sense if it takes a sort of, the rest of the season, particularly for them to get. We don't know where this season's going to end up, but it would make sense if it takes this season for them to get a little bit more used to the idea of it. As I say, Elton, I'm not sure will ever be overly comfortable with it, if ever. I don't know whether we'll ever actually see him.
Eugene himself still isn't, is he?
Eugene's
exactly. Killed a few of them, but he still gets nervous and that.
Yeah. It is quite funny when you're watching this and them sort of, and then the juxtaposition, because I watched this and then watched Fear straight after it. And,
okay, I did the other way around.
Right, yeah. You're watching Fear and they're kind of merrily just like mowing through hundreds of them in one go. and then you kind of got this where they're kind of struggling to kill one. It is this odd juxtaposition. It's not a criticism because it does make perfect sense for the characters. It's just a little odd when you see them, oh, I got this, smack through the head. And then with these, they're really struggling just to kill one or two of them. Because they're at very different points in their sort of zombie killing career. But it would make sense if they're going to come up against one or two as they go through. The girls have killed a couple of them now. With Silas, it's slightly different because I think he's very, he has this sort of PTSD thing, and he's kind of disturbed about, even though they are undead, just the violent nature of it. I think so that'll be interesting to see where they land on that eventually. The girls, I think, will probably become more comfortable with it as we go through this season.
Do you think we could have like a end of the last scene of this season could be like them as a group of 6 taking a bunch of them out, maybe
possibly
as a sort of like, okay, these characters are here now sort of thing, and then you finish the season with that, and then you got one more season left to just finish telling the story, possibly. So
that would somewhere like that would make a certain amount of sense, I think.
I remember when they did that, wasn't the end of season 2, the end of season 1 of The Walking Dead, I think. It can't have been the end of season 2 because Shane was alive in the scene that I'm talking about, and he died obviously at the end of the second season. It must have been the end of season 1. I think it was like Andrea and Rick and a bunch of other characters, and there was like a bunch of walkers that they went up to, and
no, can't have been the end of season 1, because the end of season 1 wasn't that Rick stuck in a tank.
Oh yeah, maybe it was the end of season 2, but not the finale. Possibly, maybe it was a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah,
or something. So, but I remember when that happened as well. That was quite a good coming together kind of scene. Anna says, with this post-credit scene, what do you think? What do you see the end game being here? I suspect that the main show will end, and the franchise will use the CRM group for something big. I mean, this is all certainly leading up to something, big picture wise. It seems to be, the big kind of mystery around the whole franchise, and it's the one kind of thing that has actually been in all 3 shows. Yeah, because although we've had like Morgan and Dwight in Fear, the only thing connecting all 3 actual shows is this CRM military group and the helicopters, because we've seen the helicopters in each of the shows now. So yeah, it's got to be something to do with them. Like we said a minute ago, I think that the main show will end. This show will end around the same time. Then we will see where Rick even is and what he remembers, and if they do the amnesia trick or whatever happens there. And then Fear will probably just continue normally, but still have references to the CRM, or maybe they'll use that in a bigger way. But there's certainly going to be eventually some connective tissue around. The main show ends, you'll probably get something there, and then the World Beyond show, which is more tied into the CRM than any of the other 3 shows, and then the Rick film will probably come in and do something, because obviously we know that Rick is here anyway. So yeah, it's certainly leading to all that as well.
I mean, the CRM group seems to be their end game thing. That seems to be where they're certainly. It feels like that will be kind of the end point for the main show. Potentially, will end up being something involving that group, and I do wonder whether you're going to end up with all the shows converging towards the end of the main Walking Dead show, and then Fear will carry on. The great thing about Fear is it morphs into a different thing every season. So it's a dramatically different show now than it was when it started, and even then, you've gone through each season's changed quite dramatically in what it actually is. You've had this sort of them trying to help people, and then you've had them. You've got this situation now where they're dealing with another group, and so it's morphed into very different things each season. So. I think Fear's fight. If it ends up with them doing a season where maybe they've got in bed with the CRM group, or they've taken control of it somehow after the end of the main finale, or there's various ways that you could go with that. It could be that they go in a completely different direction, but Fear will continue, and then you've got the Daryl and Carol spin-off as well, whatever that ends up being. So yeah, I mean, I do feel like this group has been woven in to the TV Walking Dead for a very, very long time at this point, and I feel like that they're possibly pushing towards some kind of endgame moment of bringing everything together for a few episodes of one of the shows. Maybe. So whether it's the end of this or whether these characters turn up at the finale of the main Walking Dead, or I don't know what it's going to be, but I sort of feel like that this is where they're heading towards. Yeah,
there's certainly an idea there. So Keith says, and this is the final part, I am sort of enjoying this show but can't connect with these kids. I know it's a YA series, but I want 1 or 2 more adult characters to connect to. I can understand what he's going for here.
I think that's the same problem I'm having with it.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. Yeah,
because I mean it's interesting because I mean Fear I'm very, very into at the moment. I think they're doing a superb job on that show. I know you weren't a fan of the last episode, but
Did you listen to the?
I haven't listened to it, but I saw some of the things you posted
the tweet
about
thing.
It. Yeah. I know you weren't a huge fan of it, but. I really like that episode, and I thought they're doing a really good job on Fear, and I don't know, I just connect to those characters better. I think than, and it's a YA show. I'm very far from being YA at this point, so You know, it's not aimed at me, clearly. I'm enjoying it, but some of the YA elements are kind of grating on me slightly. But then you know, if that's what it's there for, I get what it is. I get why it's there. You know, it isn't directly aimed at me. I'm enjoying enough of the other stuff to keep it going. But yes, I'm kind of in agreement that I would like some older characters in there because I connect with them a bit more. I mean, I don't mind some YA stuff. It depends how well put together it is, you know, and some of the YA things in this is slightly grating on me. I like some of the kids, you know. I think Silas is quite interesting. I think the two main girls, as I say, Iris kind of really grates on me. Hope I quite like, and Elton I think is a good character. But
yeah. I think for me, it's, you know, I'm not 15 or 16 anymore. I'm 26, scarily heading towards 30. So you know, I'm well,
I'm heading towards 50, but never mind.
Yeah, but as the younger of the two of us, I certainly, you know, connect more with the younger characters. It's not just that for me. It's not even the fact that, you know, I'm younger and I kind of maybe get them a bit more. I've been saying for a few seasons that I've wanted one of The Walking Dead or part of The Walking Dead to focus on some young characters because they've had the opportunity to do it several times, but just happened to have killed off some of those young characters, so they never even did it. So I'm just happy that we're kind of getting I'm kind of getting what I asked for, which is, you know, a bit more of a focus on the young sort of generation. In terms of the older characters thing, I think that's probably what Huck and Felix are put in there for. They're kind of the older ones that are trying to sort of guide these kids and be the older characters that the older audience sort of connect to a bit more. So
I mean, like you say, older characters, they're still kind of probably in their mid-20s, so, you know.
Yeah, they're a bit older, and they're the sort of adults.
I do think it's helped having them all together in one group.
Yeah.
This episode, definitely. I think that's helped.
Yep. And that's the end of the episode. Thank you all very much for listening. You can find everything that we've got on entertainmenttalk.org. We'll be back next week for episode 5 and see where things go. And if Felix tries to pull Elton away from the group or whatever happens there, we'll find out next week. In the meantime, if you want to support the podcast and Entertainment Talk, if you like what you hear in this podcast and you want to hear more and you want to support it, that would be great. There's a few different options for you. We are on Patreon. You can have a look at the $1 and $3 level tiers for instant ad-free podcast and review options. Amazon affiliate link if you're buying stuff either for Christmas or you're buying a PlayStation 5 for whatever, you know, anything that you're buying on Amazon. We can get a small cut of what you spend, but it won't cost you extra, so that's great as well. iTunes feed, you can find us on there. If you search for Entertainment Talk on your favourite podcast platform, you can subscribe to us on there. If we're not on your favourite podcast platform, please let us know and we'll look to put in the podcasts on there in the future as well. You can also use word of mouth. You can simply tell people that you know about the website, the iTunes feeds and the different content. Social media, you can do the same thing but with Facebook and Twitter and different Facebook groups if you can. David runs Geektown, of course, geektown.co.uk for all your up-to-date reliable TV and film news. So if you want to know future information about The Walking Dead or anything related to TV and film news, head over to geektown.co.uk. If you want that in weekly podcast format for Geektown Radio, that is available on Tuesdays. This week's episode is available to be listened to, which I did this morning. Very good listen. You can find that, of course, by searching for Geektown on iTunes and podcast services. Bex is on Twitch daily at the moment, and she does a Scream Saturday sort of stream as well. You can find her if you search for Trista Bytes, Trista Bytes on Twitch. Go and follow her, subscribe to her for all that cool stuff over there. And lastly, you can look up for Let's Play Sunday episodes as well. There's been a bunch recorded, a bunch of them coming out, so keep your eyes on that and everything that we do on entertainmenttalk.org. Thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.